I thought I knew betrayal, ex-boyfriends, flaky friends, even a boss who took credit for my work. But nothing prepares you for the day your own brother sells your home behind your back, and then blocks you like you never existed. I raised him when our parents died, paid his debts, gave him everything. Now I'm the villain in a story I built from love. You think it ends there? No, I documented everything, and I'm going to show you, not with rage, not with revenge, but with receipts. Because when family turns into predators, survival becomes strategy. And I've planned every move. I used to say without hesitation that I'd take a bullet for my brother, that if life ever demanded it, I'd die so he could live. People thought I was exaggerating, but they didn't know what Michael meant to me. He wasn't just my older brother. After our parents died when I was 10, he became everything: protector, guide, my last piece of family. I was 12 when he got diagnosed with a rare blood disorder. We couldn't afford treatment, and I still remember the night I snuck into the bathroom, shaved my head, and started a campaign at school to raise money. I raised enough to cover his meds for 3 months. I never cried about the teasing. He lived. That was all that mattered. Michael had always been charming. Teachers loved him. Strangers trusted him. And I, foolishly, believed in him more than I believed in myself. When he said he wanted to start his own business at 27, I was the first to offer help. I transferred my entire savings into his account, 10 years of overtime and skipped vacations, all gone in a click. He said it was just a temporary placeholder. Legal stuff, he joked. I laughed too, because why would I question my brother? Things felt like progress for a while. He'd send updates, photos of blueprints, contracts. I never asked for receipts. I didn't need them. He was my brother. Until one day, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Final notice for unpaid property tax. I was confused. I didn't own a second property, did I? But the letter had my name on it. And then the mortgage company called, asking about payment delays for a condo registered under Michael's name. I sat with that paperwork for hours, turning it over, checking for mistakes. My name wasn't anywhere, just Michael's. The signature on the transfer looked like mine, but the date, I don't remember signing anything that day or that year. My stomach twisted. I called him, straight to voicemail. I texted, left emails. Days passed, then weeks. Nothing. He had ghosted me, and I wasn't even sure why. At first, I thought something happened to him. Maybe he was in trouble. Maybe he needed time. But when I checked his social media, locked, blocked, I wasn't even on his friend list anymore. I started to panic, called hospitals, checked arrest records. Nothing. He was gone. Not missing, just gone from me. There were nights I barely slept. I'd sit by the window with an old photo album in my lap, tracing the edges of his face in our childhood pictures. The two of us in thrift store Halloween costumes. Him holding my hand at Dad's funeral. Me hugging him when he got his GED. I kept telling myself he'd come back, that this was just a phase. I cooked his favorite stew and froze it. I wrote him letters I never sent. 4 months later, an email arrived. No subject line. Just a single sentence. Need more money. Things are finally working. That was it. No apology, no explanation, just a demand. And like a fool, I nearly replied. I typed, "Of course, what do you need?" My finger hovered over send, but something small, sharp, and scared, stopped me. I didn't hit send. I closed my laptop, and I cried. A week later, I got a message from Lily. a high school friend I hadn't spoken to in years. She'd seen Michael on a beach in Mexico, sipping cocktails with a woman I didn't recognize. He looked relaxed, happy, tanned, not like someone struggling to survive. She attached a picture. There he was, grinning, holding hands with a blonde in a sun hat. My savings had paid for that tan. My trust had paid for her jewelry. My loyalty had funded his freedom from me. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just hurt, I was afraid. He came back like nothing had happened. One sunny Saturday, an email arrived. Dinner this Friday, my treat, bring your appetite. The subject line read, Family First. I stared at it for hours, wondering if it was real. There was no apology, no mention of the months he disappeared. Just an invitation with a time and address. Still, I went. The restaurant was a sleek, downtown place I could never afford. Candlelight shimmered off marble countertops. Michael greeted me at the door, wearing a blazer I'd never seen, looking like the golden boy I remembered, only glossier, more curated. He hugged me tightly, patted my back like nothing was broken between us. You look great, he said, motioning me toward the private dining room. I've missed you. I wanted to believe him. The table was full. Old friends, some distant relatives, his girlfriend, Lana, who smiled like a pageant queen and called me sweetheart. Toasts were made. Wine flowed. Michael told stories of the crazy ride he'd been on, never once mentioning the months I spent in silence, wondering if he was alive. He winked at me across the table as if we were in on the same secret. I laughed when everyone laughed. I drank the wine. I told myself this was it. He was back. He was sorry in his own way, and I could let it go. That's what love does, right? Forgives. After dessert, I offered to help clear plates. In the kitchen, while searching for trash bags, I opened a drawer, and there it was, a folder labeled with my name. Inside, documents I didn't recognize, bank letters, real estate transfers, loan agreements, all bearing one thing in common, my signature, slanted, familiar. But some dates didn't match my memory, some words I didn't recognize. One paper stood out, the official transfer of my apartment to Michael's business name. Dated last year. I stared at it like it was a bomb. I didn't remember signing this. I couldn't remember anything around that time that would make this real. But there it was. Black ink. My name. No witnesses listed. I put everything back. My hands shook as I folded napkins. The rest of the evening blurred. Smiles, laughter, hugs goodbye. I smiled too, and I didn't sleep for 3 nights. Instead, I lay in bed, replaying every interaction from the last 2 years. The casual conversations, the way Michael would ask for just one more signature. The times he waved away legal jargon, saying, "It's just paperwork." I made lists. I drew timelines. I tried to stitch a story that made sense. But the more I remembered, the more I wished I didn't. Have you ever remembered something and wished you hadn't? A moment where everything felt safe, only to realize, in hindsight, you were already being robbed. That week, I noticed something else. A family dinner was being planned by Michael and Lana. I wasn't invited, not directly. I only found out because a message meant for someone else landed in my inbox from Lana. It read, "Make sure Karen doesn't show up. She'll ruin the vibe." I stared at that sentence until it blurred. Then it hit me. There was a group chat, a family group chat, one I wasn't in. The realization gutted me more than I expected. I wasn't just left out. I was intentionally removed. I checked my phone, no invites, no updates, nothing. I scrolled back weeks, months, silence. The next blow came from someone unexpected. My mother's old friend Helen sent me a short message. Did you know Michael sold the apartment last month? I thought it was still under your name. I read that message 3 times. Then I called the city office, pretended I needed to update my mailing address. The clerk read off the ownership status of the apartment I had lived in for 10 years. It was transferred under a corporate entity 8 months ago. Owner of record, Michael Whitaker, CEO. My breath left me. That night I called him. He answered on the 3rd ring, voice smooth. Hey, you. I know, I said. He was quiet for a beat. Know what? You sold my home. It was in my name. You forged my signature. And now I'm finding out from a stranger. A pause, then a sigh. Karen, you're being dramatic. I waited. You signed those papers, okay? You just don't remember. You were always emotional, overwhelmed. I stepped in to help you. I never asked for help like this. Well, maybe that's why you end up alone. There it was. The knife behind the smile. You don't know how to love, Karen. You think love is control, guilt, keeping score. And you think love is theft. He laughed, soft, cruel. I think love is doing what needs to be done. I hung up. For the first time, I didn't cry. The day after our call, I pulled out every box from the back of my closet. Receipts, tax documents, scribbled Post-its with dates and half memories. I sat on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by paper trails of a life I thought was private. Turns out, Michael had been in every folder, every transaction, every corner of my trust. I started with bank statements, red circles, highlighters, a spreadsheet with tabs color-coded by year, a charge for a lawyer I never hired, an investment withdrawal I never approved, a signed consent form sent from an IP address I didn't recognize. My name was everywhere, my knowledge nowhere. I cross-referenced emails, found one from 3 years ago. Hey sis, can you forward me that notarized copy of your ID again? I lost the last one. It had seemed innocent. Now it read like a setup. I dug deeper into joint transactions, digital signatures, and data logs. That's when I found it. A transfer of funds, $25,000, from my savings to a shell company. The authorization signature bore my name, but the handwriting was off. The timestamp matched a day I was out of town, proven by a flight confirmation still sitting in my inbox. Michael had signed it, not me. I sat still for a long time, the weight of it pressing into my lungs. Every detail was intentional. Every lie was layered, subtle, dressed in, helping you, and just legal stuff. He hadn't just betrayed me, he'd rehearsed it. I scheduled a meeting with a lawyer. Her office was sleek, walls lined with framed degrees and carefully chosen books on trauma and litigation. She listened without interrupting, took notes, asked sharp questions. When I showed her the forged document, she nodded slowly. We can build a case, she said, but it's going to get ugly. I expected that, and public. That gave me pause. Are you ready to expose your own brother in court? On paper? In headlines? I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure. A part of me still flinched at the idea of destroying him, because that's what it felt like. Even after all he'd done, the thought of hurting him made me nauseous. That's what emotional conditioning does. It teaches you to protect the people who harm you. I looked at her and said, I'm not here to destroy him. I'm here to stop pretending. That night, I couldn't sleep. I curled up in bed, knees to chest, staring at the ceiling. I felt like a child again, like the little girl who used to wait for Michael to come home from the hospital, promising her life would get better. Only this time, I was the one who had to save her. If the people who are supposed to protect you become the threat, who protects you then? The next morning, I created a folder on my laptop called Just in Case. I uploaded scans, photos, email threads, voice memos, bank records, every piece of evidence. I backed it up in 3 places: cloud, hard drive, secure USB. I password protected everything. It was mine now. The truth was mine. Still, the heaviness didn't go away. I needed to speak, even if no one knew it was me. So I wrote, anonymously. I started a blog on a platform for whistleblowers and trauma survivors. The title of my first post, Surviving My Brother. I told the story with no names, no dates, no identifiers, just truth, the kind that burns your throat when you say it out loud. I posted it at 2:17 a.m., then I shut my laptop and cried. I didn't expect anyone to read it, but they did. By noon, the post had 6,000 shares. By the next day, 20,000 don't. Comments poured in, some angry, some heartbroken, most of them saying, "This happened to me too." Then came the message from a woman named Julie. "I know this isn't my business," she wrote, "but I think I know who your brother is. If I'm right, he took $8,000 from me last year. I never got it back. I thought I was the only one." My heart stopped. I responded cautiously. She sent more details, names, timelines. They matched. Another woman messaged me, then a man, then 2 more strangers, all with versions of the same story. Michael, promising investment returns, borrowing money, disappearing. Suddenly, this wasn't just my story. It was a pattern. He hadn't just stolen from me. He'd made a career out of it. And now I had a choice: stay quiet to protect our family name, or use what I knew to stop him from hurting anyone else. For the first time, silence wasn't an option. The podcast was called Bloodline Unfiltered, a space for people to tell their stories when their last name had become their prison. It was late-night radio meets underground therapy. I never planned to be on it. But after the blog exploded, the host, Mara, reached out. She said, "Your voice might save someone else." I hesitated. I wasn't ready to say his name out loud, even behind a voice filter. But Mara promised anonymity. She promised dignity. So I said yes. We recorded on a Sunday morning. Her studio was small, the kind with velvet chairs and the scent of strong coffee. I wore a hoodie, kept my eyes down. She adjusted the voice modulator and said, "Just speak from the place that broke. That's where truth lives." I did. I spoke for 43 minutes. I told them about Michael, about the trust, the manipulation, the forged signature, the silence. The day I realized my brother had become my thief. I ended with this: sometimes the person you'd take a bullet for is the one holding the gun. And they're smiling. Mara blinked hard. That's going to sit with people. And it did. Within 3 days, the episode became the most played in the show's history. Listeners reposted quotes, created animations, wrote poems. One woman messaged me saying, "I thought I was crazy. Now I just think I was conditioned." But not everyone was anonymous. 2 of Michael's former business contacts reached out to me indirectly. One messaged Mara, asking for the full name of the speaker. Another emailed, "Is this about Michael Whitaker?" I knew what came next. A week later, a man in a gray coat stood outside my apartment building holding a press badge. His name was Evan Tate, freelance reporter, known for chasing financial scandals with the precision of a bloodhound. "I think your story could stop others from getting hurt," he said when I agreed to meet at a cafe. "I know who your brother is. I've been following him for a year." My breath caught. He showed me a notebook filled with names, transactions, dates, victims, people who had given Michael money, time, belief, and ended up with nothing. "Your blog confirmed my theory," he said, "but I need more." "I don't want to destroy him," I whispered. Evan leaned in. "You're not. You're documenting the truth. And what he does with it, that's on him." That night, I sat by my window, watching the streetlights hum to life. I thought about justice, about dignity, about the thin, painful line between revenge and accountability. Part of me wanted to scream his name from the rooftops. Another part wanted to disappear entirely. Who would I be if I dragged my brother into the light? Who was I if I didn't? The invitation came 2 days later, the annual family Christmas gathering, an event we'd skipped since Mom died, but this year someone decided to revive it. Held at Aunt Dee's lake house, fireplaces, wine, old stories on loop. I wasn't sure if the invite was a mistake or a trap, but I went, and I brought a USB drive in my coat pocket. Michael was already there when I arrived. He looked radiant, golden as ever, charming relatives like a politician shaking hands. Lana hung on his arm, her laugh sharp and polished. He saw me, raised a glass from across the room. I nodded back, polite, distant. Dinner was normal. Laughs, clinking silverware, polite stories. No one mentioned the blog. No one looked too closely. After dessert, Aunt Dee called for stories, holiday memories, favorite moments. When it was my turn, I stood. "I brought something," I said, pulling the USB from my pocket. I walked to the TV, plugged it in. The room went quiet, and then the audio began. Michael's voice filled the space, calm, cruel, unmistakable. "I don't owe her anything. She's a goddamn parasite. Always crying, always clinging. She thinks helping me means she owns me, but she's just a mental case with a guilt complex. I don't need her in my life." The room fell into a stunned silence. My hands didn't shake. I didn't cry. I unplugged the drive, placed it on the mantel, and said, "I just wanted you to hear it from him." Then I turned and walked toward the door. No shouting, no accusations, just truth. Behind me, someone stood. A shuffle, a cough. It was my grandmother. Her voice, frail but steady, filled the silence. "Enough," she said. "She's endured enough." No one argued. I stepped into the cold December night, air biting against my face, lungs full of something new, freedom. Filing the lawsuit felt like pushing a boulder off a cliff, and then waiting to see who got crushed beneath it. I stood outside the courthouse with my lawyer, the morning air brittle against my skin, holding a thick envelope of documents that told a very clear story. Fraud, coercion, and betrayal. My story, finally made official. "We've got a solid case," my lawyer said, flipping through the papers one last time. "Digital forensics, witness statements, property history. It's all here. If the judge reads half of this, we're looking at full asset recovery." I nodded, my stomach tight. It was strange. After all the rage, all the pain, I didn't feel triumphant. Just tired, deep tissue tired. News of the lawsuit didn't stay quiet for long. Within a week, Michael responded, not through lawyers, but publicly, on his personal blog, of all places. A glossy post titled, "When Family Turns Against You." He painted himself as a victim, called me unstable, vindictive, emotionally unwell, claimed I was manipulating facts, distorting history, that I was trying to ruin his life over misunderstandings. The comments were a mix of loyal defenders and curious strangers. Some took his side, others weren't so sure. But what he didn't expect was what came next. 3 days after his post went live, a woman named Marcy posted a long thread on Twitter. She had dated Michael 5 years ago, and according to her, he'd done the same thing to her, word for word. Coercion, manipulation, borrowed money, false promises, silence. She'd even filed a police report back then, but nothing came of it. Her story went viral overnight, and suddenly I wasn't just a woman suing her brother. I was part of a larger pattern. More people came forward, mostly women. Former employees, ex-partners, even a family friend, all with similar stories, all carrying the same expression I saw in the mirror for years: exhaustion, confusion, disbelief. The media picked it up next. A few blogs, then a local news station. Michael's shiny persona began to dull in the spotlight. His inspirational entrepreneur image cracked with every testimony. And still, I didn't gloat. Instead, I wrote. In my journal that night, I scribbled, "Justice isn't about winning. It's about ending the cycle. It's about finally putting the story down." The court date arrived on a rainy Thursday. The courthouse smelled like dust and old wood. Michael arrived in a navy suit, clean-shaven, eyes hidden behind thin-rimmed glasses. He didn't look at me, not once. The trial was fast. The evidence was overwhelming. My lawyer presented financial timelines, forged signatures, metadata. Evan Tate, the journalist, provided corroboration. Marcy submitted her police report. My voice, though filtered, was played from the podcast. Michael's defense fell apart before it started. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. The property had to be returned, financial compensation for damages ordered, and all further contact from Michael legally restricted. It was done. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. Outside the courtroom, the sky had cleared. I stood on the steps alone, coat wrapped tightly around me, watching people rush past with umbrellas and briefcases. My phone buzzed. Michael, first call in 5 years. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over answer. I even imagined what he might say. Maybe something rehearsed, maybe real. Maybe he'd sound like the brother I used to love. But I didn't need closure. I didn't need his voice in my ears to validate what I'd just lived through. I blocked the number, not from anger, but from peace. It was over, and it wasn't. Because healing doesn't have a finish line. It's not a courtroom gavel or a press release. It's waking up and choosing not to look backward. It's making space for silence that doesn't ache, for decisions that don't tremble. That night, I made tea, lavender, my mother's favorite. I sat by the window, same one I used to cry beside. Only this time, I didn't look out waiting for someone to return. I looked forward. I sold the apartment, what used to be our apartment, within a month of the court ruling. I didn't cry when I handed over the keys. I didn't walk through each room one last time, or run my fingers along the walls like in the movies. I'd already said goodbye, not to the space, but to everything it represented. Silence, shame, a love I'd been taught to offer without limits. With the settlement money, I bought a small condo near the ocean. It wasn't glamorous. White walls, creaky floors, a view of the water if you leaned over the balcony just right. But it was mine, fully, legally, unquestionably mine. No shared documents, no forged signatures, just me. And for the first time, that was enough. I redecorated slowly. not with expensive pieces, but with intention. Bookshelves full of stories by survivors, a couch soft enough to fall asleep on, a kettle that whistled like a friend calling your name. Every detail was a quiet rebellion against the chaos I'd left behind. In the mornings, I walked barefoot on the sand with coffee in hand. In the evenings, I lit candles, not because I was sad, but because I finally had the time to sit still. Then one morning, I opened my inbox to a message from someone I didn't know. Subject line, "You saved me." Her name was Alina, 26, estranged from her father after years of emotional abuse disguised as discipline. She had heard my podcast, read my blog, followed the court case from afar, and when her family called her crazy for setting boundaries, she said she remembered my voice. "You made me feel sane," she wrote. "You made me feel like surviving wasn't something to be ashamed of," I cried. Not because I was hurt, but because I was no longer the only one holding this story. Within weeks, I launched an online course, Rebuilding After Family Betrayal. It wasn't flashy, just a weekly Zoom call, PDF workbooks, and open discussions. But people showed up from everywhere, with stories eerily similar to mine. Different names, different languages, same ache. We didn't talk about revenge. We talked about reinvention, about loving safely, about building a life that didn't require anyone's permission to feel good. One night after class, I returned to my mailbox to find a letter. Handwritten, no return address. The handwriting made my stomach flip. Michael. The envelope was heavy. I didn't open it right away. I held it like it might burn. When I finally tore it open, the first line read, "I've lost everything. I think I understand now." He said he'd watched the trial clips, heard the podcast, seen the blog. He said our family won't talk to him. Friends had stopped calling. His girlfriend left. He was in therapy now, learning, regretting, and he wanted me to know. The rest of the letter was long, soft, almost sincere, the kind of words I dreamed of hearing 5 years ago. But it wasn't 5 years ago anymore. I folded the paper, slid it back into the envelope, and sent it back. No note attached. Forgiveness is a language I still speak, but I've learned it doesn't require a conversation. Later that week, I sat on the beach, notebook on my lap, pen in hand. The waves hummed like a lullaby. I wrote, "I didn't win. I didn't get justice in the way the movies teach us. But I came back to myself, and that's enough. I'm not a warrior. I'm not a victim. I'm just someone who stopped saying yes to pain." I smiled. Close the journal. You don't heal by proving them wrong. You heal by no longer needing to. I no longer lived for validation. I lived for quiet mornings, for safe spaces, for every woman who ever doubted herself after loving someone too hard. And if you're still reading this, you're not broken. You're not crazy. You're just waking up. Keep going. In the final scene, the camera would pull back. If this were a film, you'd see me standing in front of my laptop, a wall behind me filled with post-it notes, quotes, and sticky dreams. Dozens of faces glow from the screen, students, survivors, strangers turned sisters, and me, steady, my voice no longer trembling, my story no longer hidden. "Welcome back," I say, smiling into the lens. "Let's begin."